Did you know that Fallout 3 has some pretty cool hidden factions that you might have missed? Groups like Chinese Remnants before the bombs fell that are still around. A faction hell-bent on harvesting organs for profit, evil mercenaries and slavers, and a lot more. I'll be covering every faction in the Fallout series, large or small, in the near future. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then consider subbing. We also have a lot more Fallout content on the channel and a lot more to come. Enjoy the video, guys. The Abolitionists are a small but determined group in the Capital Wasteland. They're dedicated to freeing slaves and fighting against the slavers of Paradise Falls, even though they don't have that much manpower or firepower to back up their cause. Their leader is Hannibal Hamlin, a former slave himself who escaped around 2271. After gaining his freedom, he set out to build a safe haven for other runaway slaves. That led him to the Temple of the Union, a ruined office building in DC, where the head of the Abraham Lincoln statue from the Lincoln Memorial had been stored. Hamlin took this discovery as a sign and built his movement around the ideals of Lincoln, the great emancipator. The Temple of the Union became both their home and a sanctuary for anyone escaping slavery. They keep the giant stone head of Lincoln as a kind of sacred symbol. To the abolitionists, it represents freedom and hope, even if most of their understanding of Lincoln's history is based on distorted fragments passed down through the centuries. But they hold on to his memory like a kind of faith, a belief that slavery can be ended once again, just like it was in Lincoln's time. Life at the temple isn't easy. The building is overcrowded and supplies are running low, making it hard to keep housing more and more refugees. Hamlin's dream is to move the group to the actual Lincoln Memorial in the DC ruins, both because it would give them more space and because restoring the memorial would send a pretty powerful message to slaves across the wasteland. He even hopes to recover a copy of the Gettysburg Address to use it as a rallying cry. The idea is that slaves everywhere would hear about it, be inspired to escape, or maybe even rise up against their masters. The abolitionists don't just shelter runaways though. They also go on the offensive when they can. Some members take on bounties to hunt down known slavers, trying to hit Paradise Falls where it hurts. The group is small and not very well armed, and their only real protection is how hidden their base is. If the slavers ever found the Temple of the Union, it would be a massacre. Their biggest enemies are, of course, the slavers of Paradise Falls. The slavers know that the abolitionists are one of the only groups openly working against them, so they do everything they can to undermine Hamlin's people, destroying Lincoln artifacts, spreading fear, and trying to sniff out the temple's location. Outside of them, not many other groups seem to care. Rivet City doesn't get involved, and even the Brotherhood of Steel under Lions doesn't bother with freeing slaves. That leaves the abolitionists as basically the only organized resistance to slavery in the Capital Wasteland. Unless we're considering the small railroad faction in Rivet City, but that's a whole other thing. Chinese Remnants in Fallout 3 are the last surviving operatives from China's covert military operations in Washington, DC. Before the bombs fell, they were stationed at Mama Dolce's food processing plant, which was just a cover for their spy work. Captain Huang led the group, and while the plant really did produce food, it was mainly a front to generate money and keep their operations funded. At first, it worked. They even faked American identities with names like Robert Whiteman, Thomas Jenkins, and Michael Smith, which is honestly hilarious. But as time went on, rising costs and supply problems made it harder to keep up the cover, and the whole operation was starting to struggle right before the war hit. When the Great War came, most of these operatives were either killed or turned into ghouls. The ones who survived stayed loyal to their cause. Even 200 years later, you can still find a handful of them in Mama Dolce's. They're wearing old messed up Chinese uniforms and holding on to their communist ideals. They're also pretty ugly as sin. Honestly, all the ghouls in Fallout 3 really are, and I love that. They'll shout slogans praising Chairman Chang and cursing America as they attack. By the way, they are hostile on sight, so don't go in expecting a convo or anything like that. More remnants can also be found at Broadcast Tower KT-8, where some of their dead spies are hidden in the underground sewers. Their devotion to secrecy means they've stayed off most people's radar, and their isolated location in Arlington makes it unlikely anyone would stumble upon them by accident. They're pretty unique compared to most of the ghouls in the Capital Wasteland, because like Moira, if she turns a ghoul, they don't have distorted voices. They still sound like Chinese troops you hear in Tranquility Lane or even Operation Anchorage. It's a pretty sweet little faction hidden in the game in my opinion. Littlehorn and Associates is one of the weirdest groups you'll find in this game. Maybe in a lot of the games, honestly. They're a shady company run by Daniel Littlehorn, with a handful of secretaries working under him in a scrapyard office. Nobody really knows where they come from, or what their overall goal is, or how big their network might be. Daniel keeps things vague on purpose, only telling people what they need to hear. His whole thing is basically, you provide the service, we provide the payment, don't ask questions. The service in question is tied to the contract killer perk. If the Lone Wanderer has it, they can bring human ears from good aligned NPCs to Littlehorn and Associates in exchange for caps. The more evil the Wanderer becomes, the bigger the bonus payment. It's kind of a creepy system, but it shows exactly what kind of work this company is interested in. Quiet, efficient killings that send a message while staying off the radar. Daniel even brags that they could be running jobs right out in the open and nobody would ever notice. The employees don't act like mercenaries though, at least not like the Lone Wanderer. They're just secretaries sitting at desks and keeping records and taking whatever you bring in. Even if one of them gets killed, the others won't even fight back. They'll just say, better them than me, and then they carry on like nothing happened. Seems like they're only interested in keeping their business moving no matter what. The game never directly links them to other factions, but it's kind of implied that they're the opposite of the Regulators. Both groups offer contracts tied to karma, but from completely different moral standpoints. They never clash in the game, but if you work with Littlehorn and Associates, you'll eventually be hunted by the Regulators for your evil deeds. Makes me wonder what they need all these ears for and why they want specifically good karma people dead. Also, speaking on the Regulators are a vigilante group in the Capital Wasteland. They're dedicated to hunting down criminals and bringing justice to this wasteland. And by justice, they mean execution. Their leader is Sonora Cruz, and their members are easy to notice thanks to their dusters and the wide-brimmed hats. They kind of look like old pre-war gunslingers. The group was founded around 2267, but nobody really knows who the original founders were. Sonora now runs the operation out of a farmhouse near Canterbury Commons, which acts as their HQ. She keeps track of contracts, bounties, and payments to members. One of their most famous members is Lucas Sims, who as we know doubles as the Sheriff of Megaton. I actually didn't know he was part of the group until making this video. I just thought he wore the outfit just because. But you can actually learn it in the game guide for Fallout 3, so that's a pretty cool little fact for you. The Regulators aren't just bounty hunters, they also see themselves as a militia, keeping order wherever they can. Their system is simple. Criminals are tracked, killed, and proof of the deed is brought back in the form of a severed finger. To the Regulators, the fingers are just tokens used to mark a job done. Sonora trusts that her people won't abuse the system by killing innocent people, but the group operates almost entirely on honor. For tougher cases, they sometimes put special bounties on more infamous criminals. Joining them means you need the Lawbringer perk, which lets the Lone Wanderer collect fingers from evil NPCs. After that, Sonora will pay caps for each one turned in. If the Wanderer maintains very good karma, Sonora gives bonus payments and praises you for going above and beyond. On the other hand, if the Wanderer sinks into evil karma, the Regulators will eventually send hunting parties after them. When it comes to gear, Regulators don't have standardized weapons, but they're pretty well armed. You'll see them using laser rifles, shotguns, assault rifles, and of course dressed in the iconic duster that we all love. As we know, the Regulators are basically the opposite of Littlehorn and Associates. But for me, and I'm sure a lot of you, it makes more sense for this to be a thing, taking down evil people so that they can't keep hurting innocent people. It's a pretty good motive. Also, these Regulators are different from the Regulators that the Vault Dweller meets in Fallout 1. We know this because of the game guide for 3. It states that the Regulators in the Capital Wasteland are a relatively new faction formed in like the last 10 years. Figured I'd just throw that out there for you guys. Reillys Rangers are probably one of the better known mercenary groups, and they stand out because unlike Talon Company, they actually have a code of honor. Founded by Reilly around 2273, the group takes on contracts but tries to stay on the side of what they see as good work. Things like mapping the ruins and taking out super mutants, rather than just killing whoever they're paid to. Reilly herself despises Talon Company, calling them thugs with no morals. Most of their work is focused on 2 big jobs. One is for a client who goes by the name Mr. Smith. He hired them to create detailed maps of the Capital Wasteland, especially the dangerous ruins of downtown DC. The other is a standing contract to wipe out super mutants wherever they find them. For a small team, that's pretty dangerous work, but they've managed to make a name for themselves. Their base of operations is the Ranger compound near Seward Square. The group at the time is made up of Reilly, her second-in-command Butcher, and members Brick, Donovan, and Theo. Unfortunately, one of their biggest missions was mapping out Vernon Square, which nearly wiped them out. They were ambushed by a massive group of super mutants, and the Rangers were forced into Our Lady of Hope Hospital, then pushed across into the Statesman Hotel, while being hunted the entire way. They fought floor by floor, setting traps and trying to hold their ground. But during the retreat, Theo was killed by a grenade blast. The rest made it to the roof and set up a distress signal, but no help ever came. Reilly tried to sneak out alone using a stealth boy to get reinforcements, but she was badly wounded in the escape and eventually collapsed. She was found near Underworld and was cared for by Dr. Barrows. She spent several days in a coma. With Reilly out of action, the rest of the team were left stranded on the roof of the hotel, running low on supplies and just barely hanging on. Depending on how the Lone Wanderer intervenes, the team can either be rescued and return to business, or, well, basically not make it. Reilly herself feels heavy guilt over Theo's death and second guesses her decisions, but with encouragement she can rally and keep the Rangers moving forward. These guys are a tight-knit group, with Reilly and Butcher especially close. Reilly worries that their friendship might blur the line between personal and professional. Butcher remains loyal as a right hand. Brick serves as the heavy weapons expert, Donovan handles technical support and repairs, and Theo, before his death, was the team's munitions man. They wear distinctive green combat armor marked with a 4-leaf clover and crossed swords, a little nod to their reputation for surviving thanks to sheer luck. In fact, their Ranger battle armor even grants a +1 boost to luck in the game. Some of them openly admit that surviving as long as they have has more to do with luck than anything else, which makes sense because even the Brotherhood struggles with the mutants and they're all wearing power armor. They're pretty cool, and as a kid I always loved joining them and role-playing that I had to go to locations and scout them out so that I could bring the info back to them. It gave exploring the map a purpose, which was pretty awesome. Plated these guys for a faction list, but I figured it was close enough. I mean, the definition of a faction is a small organized dissenting group within a larger one, especially in politics, which kind of feels exactly like this council. The Rivet City Council is a small governing body that runs Rivet City. It was originally founded back in 2239 by Dr. Horace Pinkerton, Annette Holmes, and Brad Danvers as a way to bring order and protection to the growing settlement on the aircraft carrier. While none of those three still sit on the council by the events of Fallout 3, Pinkerton is still alive and will even tell the Lone Wanderer about the city's early days if you ask him during that quest. By the time you do show up, the council has 3 main members: Chief Harkness, who represents security, Bannon, who represents the civilians, and Dr. Madison Lee, who represents the science quarter. If anything happens to Harkness during the Replicated Man quest, Commander Danvers can step in and actually fill his role. There's also an unmarked quest called the Council Seat, where the Lone Wanderer can get involved in the Rivet City politics. Depending on your choices, you can either help Bannon secure a spot on the council or push to have him replaced by Seagrave Holmes. While the council isn't a massive political machine, it's one of the few organized governing bodies left in the Capital Wasteland, handling disputes and making sure Rivet City keeps running. Beyond that, it's just a daily life of a settlement. They don't really seem super interested in what's going on outside of the city. Oh, and after you start the Broken Steel DLC, Dr. Lee ends up leaving to the Commonwealth and joining the Institute, but we'll get to that in a future video. The Republic of Dave is a classic. You'll find their little settlement in the far northeast corner of the map. It's a small farming compound that Dave and his family treat as its own sovereign nation. To them, it's not just a settlement, but the only civilized place left in the world. The truth is, it's a tiny fenced-in farm with a handful of residents, but Dave runs it like he's the president of the United States. The land has changed hands and names a lot over the past 2 centuries. It's been the Kingdom of Larry, the Republic of Stevie Ray, Bill Sylvania, and the Kingdom of Tom. That last one was ruled by Dave's father. Dave himself was exiled at one point and wandered the wasteland. He eventually became a mercenary and then came back to overthrow his father. After his so-called revolution, he renamed the place the Republic of Dave and declared it a democracy. But he's managed to keep winning every election ever since. The settlement does pretty okay for itself. They've got Brahmin pens and farmland, and Dave makes sure that they trade with passing caravans. Public has a whole set of government branches, even if most of them only exist on paper. There's the Army of Dave, which is literally just Dave and Bob, the Immigration Bureau, the Tourism Office, and the Bureau of Dave-like Activities. Visitors get the full treatment. Dave might charge you a tax for asylum, or you can pass a speech check and convince him you're a wasteland ambassador to stay for free. Dave has also built amenities to make the Republic feel official. They have a Capitol building, a museum dedicated to himself, men's and women's quarters, and even a school. The school is actually one of the few in the wasteland. Hurrah, right? Well, no. All of their lessons are basically propaganda. Kids are taught that Dave is smarter, stronger, and better than everyone else. The Republic is technically democratic, but in reality, Dave acts like a king. He requires everyone to address him as Mr. President and has a full-blown cult of a personality. He also uses reforms like legalized polygamy for his own benefit. He takes multiple wives, claiming it's his duty to repopulate the wasteland. Anyone who questions his rule is silenced or removed. Outsiders are tolerated only if they respect Dave, pay tribute, or pretend to recognize his nation. Those who refuse get 24 hours to leave or face execution. So yes, on paper, the Republic is a democracy, but Dave is always the only candidate. The Unmarked Quest Election Day lets you step in and actually change that. With some convincing, you can get the others in the settlement to vote against Dave.
Let's see what we have here. A vote for Rosie? Wait a minute. Has somebody tampered with the ballot box? After counting the votes, the president is... Rosie! Rosie can't be president. No! This is unfair. This can't be. Fine, I'm leaving. See how you people do without me. Enjoy your new president.
If he loses, he doesn't fight it, he just leaves to found the new Republic of Dave in Old Oni. The problem is, if you know Old Oni, then you know it's overrun with death claws. So that whole plan is doomed, and he ends up dead. Talon Company is a ruthless mercenary outfit. They're all about caps, taking jobs no matter how dirty, and they won't hesitate to kill entire towns if the pay is good. They're apparently being bankrolled by an unknown backer, with the goal of keeping the wasteland chaotic and snuffing out anyone who tries to make things better. They've even got a massacre of a whole settlement on their record, women and children included. Little is known about where Talon Company came from or who first put them together. What's clear is by the time the Lone Wanderer shows up, they're a full-blown mercenary army with organized leadership and a solid network of outposts. Their main base is Fort Bannister, where Commander Jobsco runs the show. They also keep positions scattered around DC, but sometimes they'll lose them to the supermutants, like what happened in Tacoma Park. They're infamous for targeting do-gooders. If you've got good karma, whether that's helping beggars, disarming Megaton's bomb, or even just small acts of kindness, you'll eventually have a bounty on your head. When that happens, Talon squads will ambush you across the wasteland, usually after fast traveling or near places like metro stations and landmarks. They run like a proper military group. Jobsco sits on the top, issuing orders from Fort Bannister, while squads patrol and raid across the capital wasteland. They wear black combat gear with a white-clawed bird symbol on their chest. Their flag is a bird with a skull for a face carrying off a baby. Yeah, they seem like a wholesome group. Talon squads are always well armed. They carry a mix of combat shotguns, Chinese assault rifles, laser rifles, police batons, and sidearms like 32 pistols. Sometimes they even have missile launchers, sniper rifles, or pulse grenades. And every now and then you'll run into a full squad carrying only Chinese assault rifles, which makes them pretty insane to fight. They also use reprogrammed Mr. Gutsies and sentry bots to guard certain camps. They're basically one of the worst groups in the capital wasteland. They're disciplined, well-equipped, and have no morals at all. If someone pays them to kill, they do it. No questions asked. If you decide to help people, Talon Company will be right there waiting to collect. The slavers of the capital wasteland are based out of Paradise Falls. They're led by Eulogy Jones, a charismatic but ruthless man who took power after killing the former leader, Harmon Jurley. Before him, the group was headed by Penelope Black Widow Chase. Her schemes helped the slavers wipe out Rockopolis before Argyle killed her. Over time, the slavers became more organized, working on commission for each captive they brought in. And their reputation grew so bad that towns like Arafu destroyed parts of their own settlements to keep them out. They forged a lasting bond with the Pit to move slavers north and even did business with people like Alistair Tenpenny. Their history is bloody to say the least. They once raided the town of Ridgefield and captured nearly everyone, but one child, Arkansas, who survived. He later turned the place into a minefield to exact revenge, and traders renamed it Minefield after slavers and travelers all kept dying there. Rockopolis fell because Chase tricked Herbert Dashwood and Argyle into revealing its location, allowing slavers to storm in, enslave the people, and sell them to the Pit. These incidents give them a reputation as predators who thrived on deception, violence, and broken communities. Under Eulogy's leadership, the operation became more methodical. Slavers patrol the wasteland, hunting down drifters, settlers, and anyone who looks vulnerable. Paradise Falls is heavily guarded, a settlement where both the slavers and their captives live under constant fear. Eulogy himself uses manipulation as much as fear, and his control is strong enough that he survived multiple assassination attempts. To tighten their grip, the slavers even occupied the Lincoln Memorial to stop escaped slaves and abolitionists from turning it into a symbol of freedom, while also plotting to destroy artifacts tied to Abraham Lincoln in order to erase that hope entirely. Outside Paradise Falls, they have no friends. Well, besides the Pit slavers. Most settlements fear them, resist them, or just hate them outright. The capital wasteland is barren and dangerous enough that the slavers rarely struggle to find new victims. What they can't sell locally, they ship off to the Pit. where the demand for slaves is always high. For the lone wanderer, the slavers can be your friends or your enemies. Through quests like Head of State, you can make a stand against them and help free captives, or you can work with them, capturing wastelanders and selling them to Paradise Falls. You can even buy Clover, a slave who becomes a companion if purchased. Basically, the slavers represent one of the worst realities of Fallout 3's world. They're opportunists who profit off the suffering of others. Under Eulogy Jones, Paradise Falls thrives as a hub of cruelty and control, and it's up to you to decide whether to destroy their empire or take part in it. And that does it for this vid. Nah, I'm just kidding. Of course, I saved the best for last. The Tunnel Snakes started as a group of bored teens at Vault 101 back in the late 2260s. Butch Deloria, Wally Mack, and Paul Hannon Jr. decided to form a game, and they were tossing around names during the Lone Wanderer's 10th birthday party. They had ideas like Grease Weasels and Hell's Overseers, but eventually they landed on the iconic Tunnel Snakes. They embraced a greaser look with slick back hair and custom black leather jackets with a green snake in the shape of an S. The motto was simple:
Tunnel Snakes rule!
By 2274, they were best known for hanging around the halls and picking on classmates, including harassing Amada, the Overseer's daughter. Even though they were acting like small-time punks, the Overseer was secretly using them to harass dissenters in the vault when he didn't want his security team doing the dirty work. During the chaos of the vault escape, the group began to fall apart. Paul was killed by rad roaches, Wally abandoned the gang, and that left Butch as the last founding member. Freddie Gomez eventually joined up, but if the vault was later opened during trouble on the home front, Butch was the only one still trying to keep the gang alive. If the Lone Wanderer helped save Butch's mother during the escape, they could even be considered an honorary member of the Tunnel Snakes. After leaving the vault, Butch can be found in Rivet City, still clinging on to the idea of rebuilding the gang. Years later in the Commonwealth, Fallout 4's Creation Club content shows that Wally Mack actually managed to start up a new chapter of the Tunnel Snakes in Boston. They holed up in an abandoned subway station, where they discovered barrels of radioactive waste. Wally brushed off the danger, convinced the radiation would actually give them superpowers. But of course, that move doomed the new group. Over time, the members started dying of sickness or mutating into feral ghouls, and Wally himself became a glowing one. The Tunnel Snakes' whole identity came from their look and attitude. The leather jackets and vault jumpsuits gave them a greaser style, and their weapons were usually just switchblades, pistols, or whatever else they could grab. At their height, they were never more than a handful of rebellious vault kids playing at being tough guys. But because of their sick style and their motto, the Tunnel Snakes became one of the most memorable gangs in Fallout 3, even if they never ruled much of anything outside of Vault 101's hallways. Okay, that actually does it for the Fallout 3 minor factions. I think next week we'll be covering Fallout 4's and eventually getting to the bigger ones. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then make sure you stick around. I appreciate you guys watching, and remember, enjoyed time is never wasted time, and I'll see you in the next.